Monk for the tie. Team ahead from the line to the lane. Oh. Leonard spins, fades, and connects.
No mistakes. You can't put the ball down if you don't know where the defenders are.
Sacramento leads in overtime number 2.
Last weekend, the Sacramento Kings and Los Angeles Clippers scored the second most points in NBA history, scoring a total of 351 points in a 176-175 double overtime comeback victory for the Kings. This was the highest scoring game in the 21st century, the highest scoring game with 2 or fewer overtimes, and the Kings and the Clippers became the third and fourth team in NBA history to score over 175 points in a single game. The last time the NBA saw such a scoring feat by 2 teams was 40 years ago on December 13, 1983, where the Detroit Pistons beat the Denver Nuggets in a triple OT 186-184 victory. Flash forward 40 years later, and we just witnessed the third game ever in NBA history to have 3 players score over 40 points in that single game. We don't always get to see history broken, and it's rare that we see this historic.
Eason will give Dame to Watford. Lillard sets his feet, leans back a 3. Got it, Damian Lillard. He has 36. Dame, a deep one. Buried it. Damian Lillard.
Dang. That's tough.
After witnessing the second highest scoring game in NBA history, Damian Lillard in that same weekend will score 71 points against the Houston Rockets, setting a new career high in points, knocking down 13 3-pointers, the second most ever in an NBA game, and most importantly, notched the 5th highest scoring performance in NBA history in only 39 minutes without OT. In Dame's 71-point outburst, he took the fewest shot attempts out of all the top 10 leaders in points for a single game with 38 attempts, not including Donovan Mitchell, who dropped 71 points 2 months earlier this season. So yeah, we are currently witnessing the greatest scoring era in NBA history, and players night in and night out are producing on the offensive end on an efficient and effective manner. There are currently 51 players in the NBA who are averaging 20 points per game, the most the NBA has ever had, with a variety of different ways to score. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is one of the best drivers in the league and has made a living getting to the restricted area and finishing around the rim. Kevin Durant is arguably having one of the best efficient scoring seasons in NBA history, especially from the mid-range. And the reigning scoring champion, Joel Embiid, is averaging a whopping 33 points per game, the most in the NBA currently, and the most by center in over 48 years. This season's offensive production has eclipsed the normal numbers we're used to seeing when analyzing basketball. The points per game are clearly up just by looking at the final scores of most of these games, but what has also risen is the efficiency of players in the NBA on the offensive end. Efficiency is key, and in 2023, NBA players have been just as good as putting the ball in the basket while making the most out of their shot attempts. Only 14 of the 51 20-point per game scores in the NBA this year are below the league average for true shooting percentage, proving my point that majority of the NBA's best scorers are efficient with the ball when scoring. But if that isn't enough to convince you that NBA players are just better and lethal scorers in today's game, take a look at some of the best scorers we've seen in NBA history over the past 76 years. There have been 167 players in NBA history to average over 28 points per game in a season, and there are currently 9 players in 2023 doing so right now, the most amount of players in one season ever. Those players are Joel Embiid, Luka Doncic, Damian Lillard, Giannis Antetokounmpo, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Jason Tatum, Kevin Durant, LeBron James, and Stephen Curry. Out of these 9 players, 4 are in the top 10 in true shooting percentage of all time, with Kevin Durant leading, and 7 are in the top 50 in true shooting percentage of all time amongst the highest leading point per game scorers in NBA history. The cream of the crop of today's scorers, clear majority of the better scorers in the past 76 years of guys dribbling a basketball on the court. On top of efficiency, like I've mentioned, yeah, it's cool to dive deep into the numbers, but players are also just producing incredible performances in this offensive-minded era. These are the most 40-point games in the NBA season, the outlier being the 1961-62 season, where Wilt Chamberlain was otherworldly. In the modern era, we have seen a rise in 40-point game performances by players in one season, and in 2023, that number has already been eclipsed with NBA teams in the fastest amount of games to do so. Okay, you've seen the numbers of the NBA's offensive outburst, but I know what you're asking.
Why?
People see the scoring explosion across the NBA over the past few years, and the first thing that comes to mind is that the NBA's pace of play is exponentially higher. This is semi-true. The game in a sense is technically faster, and the number of possessions per game, which is the definition of what pace is, has risen over the 2000s and 90s era. But the pace that we have seen as of late is lower than the pace that was during the 1980s. Going off of strictly pace, the 1980s era of basketball had more possessions during that era than this current of basketball, which sounds crazy to say, but I can't deny the numbers. The league currently is almost every year breaking a previous record for offensive rating in a season. So what is helping expedite this scoring increase? There has to be someone or somebody that just did
Curry from half court. Ah! Green back to Curry. Bang! Downtown. Bang! Bang! Oh, what a shot from Curry! With 0.6 of a second remaining.
Yep, this guy. Or what this guy did. The explosion of the three-point shot due to Steph Curry's offensive greatness and elite three-point shooting made the three-point shot arguably a better shot attempt than a fast break layup. I'm not kidding. Threes are imperative to an offensive system in today's game, and if a team is not proactively looking to hit three-point shots or just bricking three-point shots, you're probably not going to win that game, my G. Though this isn't technically the greatest three-point shooting season in NBA history, the three-point shot still remains to be super important in today's era, especially when scoring efficiently and effectively in the half court. And that's what separates the 80s high pace to today's high pace of basketball. Players are scoring more and are adding in a three-point shot that increases the amount of points per possession, by default, overall offensive rating. But to place all the credit on guys taking more threes and making more threes would be lazy, especially with how players are still gifted and have much more freedom on our offensive end. There essentially isn't any more true positions in basketball due to the versatility that you have on the court. Your traditional power forward could be your team's best three-point shooter. The traditional point guard can be utilized more as a scorer than the norm of being the team's main playmaker. The game today is based on bringing the most out of the players that are on the floor, and outdated schemes on offense limiting players has been left in the past. The three-point shot allows offensive sets more space to operate, and it stretches out the defense, making it much more difficult to contain an offensive set or system that can be maximized from a wider area on the floor. And sometimes, we gotta be honest with ourselves. Guys just get hot. I truly believe this is the most talented era the NBA has ever seen, and with increasing talent comes with increased amount of spectacular moments, feats, and like I've already stated, broken records. Along with talent, analytics, which many people do not favor, has in part helped teams place a much better emphasis on shots they need to take and shots they need to avoid due to their personnel. Tracking stats are a great piece of analytical data that just helps NBA teams in the scouting department when trying to study what a player's tendencies are and just knowing how to properly play to your player's strengths. We also have to admit that many rule changes being admitted in the game now have helped the offensive player succeed more in the half court. Lack of the hand check, allowing players to get to the rim and draw contact. Players are much more smarter and a lot more trickier when trying to score the basketball. I wouldn't go too far and say defense is gone, but I do think that the defensive emphasis that we saw in the 90s and the early 2000s has been relaxed just a little bit. The offensive player is clearly just more favorable. We are in an era where the offensive talent and performances cannot go underlooked. It seems like every day we're inching closer to someone breaking Kobe's infamous 81-point game in 2006. And there are more players and teams each year setting new records we couldn't even imagine would be broken. Players and legends 30 or even 40 years ago definitely deserve their respect because they also contain great scores and great scoring performances in that era that we can't ignore. And that foundation, through time, brought us to the present where we have seen the innovation and creativity of the offensive game that has revolutionized the NBA to whole different heights. All in all, the NBA's offensive explosion has been incredible to watch, and by the time you finish watching this video, I truly wouldn't be surprised if there wasn't a new scoring achievement recorded. Enjoy the buckets that are being dropped, and hopefully, the next record isn't broken against your favorite team. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Turn that post notification bell on so you never miss a video. Until next time, stay on beat.